Welcome back my channel. In the final years of the 20th century, as the world braced for the dawn of a new millennium, the hum of American life persisted with a blend of tradition and transformation. It was 1998, a time when gas was cheap, email was just beginning to make its mark, and the average American still reached for coins to pay for a cup of coffee or a candy bar. Among the many coins jingling in pockets and registers, there was one that carried more weight than its modest 1-cent value implied. It was small, copper-colored, often overlooked, and yet, hiding in plain sight was a coin that would one day make history, the 1998 D&P 1-cent penny, struck in two of the United States' busiest mints, Denver and Philadelphia. These pennies emerged by the billions. To most, they were forgettable. Just another part of the endless flow of commerce. But numismatics, the delicate and thrilling world of coin collecting, has taught us something simple yet profound. Within the most ordinary objects lies the potential for the extraordinary. And in 1998, something quietly remarkable happened at both the Denver and Philadelphia mints. Each penny featured the enduring image of Abraham Lincoln, his gaze forever cast to the right, his profile etched with familiar solemnity. The inscription, "In God We Trust," hovered above his head like a whisper of national reverence. To the left, the single word, "Liberty," carved confidently into the surface. To the right, the year, 1998, and just beneath it, either a subtle D or P, signifying its birthplace, Denver or Philadelphia. These tiny details may seem insignificant to most, but to collectors, they're the first breadcrumbs in a path that leads to history. Flip the coin and the reverse side told a story all its own, a proud image of the Lincoln Memorial, every column and shadow standing as a silent tribute to the man immortalized on the obverse. Nestled within the monument center, if you looked close enough, was a tiny figure of Lincoln himself, seated, resolute. Above it all, the phrase, "United States of America," arched like a banner, with "De Pluribus Unum" tucked neatly beneath, and at the bottom, in large letters, the denomination, 1 cent. To many, it was simply a penny. But in 1998, something slipped through the cracks of perfection. Variations, subtleties, peculiarities, call them errors or call them miracles, began to appear in a select number of these coins. And where some saw imperfection, others saw value. Some 1998 1-cent coins bore signs of doubling in their inscriptions, slight misalignments, off-center strikes, or even faint die cracks, flaws invisible to the casual observer but thrilling to the trained eye. And then there were those minted under pristine conditions, preserved in their absolute peak, coins that had never been touched by human hands, their surfaces radiant, their edges untouched, their stories just beginning. As years passed and coinage shifted toward digital obsolescence, the value of physical coins grew, not in spending power, but in historical and collectible worth. People began to realize that some of these 1998 pennies, especially those struck with microscopic variations or in perfect mint state, were far rarer than the mints had ever intended. A few collectors, with keen eyes and great patience, began to unearth them. From old coin jars, attic boxes, and estate sales, these seemingly insignificant copper coins were plucked from obscurity and thrust into numismatic legend. Imagine holding such a coin in your hand. Light glinting off its uncirculated surface, every ridge and mark still sharp, every letter unblemished. It might weigh just 2.5 grams, barely more than a feather, and yet, in that instant, you'd feel its significance. You'd understand why generations of collectors dedicate lifetimes to the pursuit of such pieces. It isn't just about rarity, it's about what the coin represents, survival, preservation, and the thin line between the mundane and the magnificent. Now, think of all the people who have walked past a coin like this. Who dropped it unknowingly, left it in a drawer, or dismissed it as pocket change. That's the beauty and tragedy of rarity, it is often lost in plain sight. But when discovered, its power is undeniable. Among the entire 1998 D&P penny population, a tiny fraction has been deemed extraordinary. Whether by virtue of their condition, their minting anomalies, or their preservation, they've crossed into the realm of the elite. And one such coin, standing above the rest, found its way into the hands of a collector who knew precisely what he had discovered. Not because it glittered more than gold, but because it whispered secrets that only the most patient and passionate could hear. This coin, this 1998 D&P 1-cent penny, is not just a survivor of time and production. It is a symbol of what happens when the overlooked is finally seen. When the quiet becomes thunderous. When a single cent becomes something far greater than money, and today, that very coin, remarkably preserved, perfectly struck, historically revered, is valued not at 1 cent, not even at 100, but at a stunning $120,000. The year was 2004. The world was caught in a whirlwind of change, technology was rapidly advancing, the internet was shaping new realities, and yet, through all the noise, one thing remained constant: the rhythmic clink of coins sliding into pockets, cash registers, and coin jars across America. Among the vast sea of currency that passed from hand to hand that year, few would have stopped to look twice at a humble copper-plated penny. But deep within the ordinary, something remarkable had quietly emerged. A single coin, small in size but enormous in significance, was struck and released. The 2004 USA 1-cent coin. It was born from the Philadelphia and Denver mints, two of the busiest production hubs in the country. Tens of millions of these coins rolled off the presses, bearing the same iconic design that had been used for decades. Most were destined for a life of routine, paying for a stick of gum, resting at the bottom of drawers, or collecting dust in forgotten piggy banks. But among them, a few were different. A few were destined to rise above the rest. At first glance, the 2004 1-cent coin seemed like any other. The obverse displayed the resolute profile of Abraham Lincoln, America's 16th president. His face was familiar, carved in stoic detail, a symbol of freedom and perseverance. The words, "In God We Trust," stood tall above his head, while "Liberty" sat quietly to the left. The year, 2004, was engraved to the right, flanked just below by a small mint mark, either D for Denver or P for Philadelphia. A small detail, but an important one. Turning the coin over, the reverse side revealed the ever-majestic Lincoln Memorial, flanked by the words, "United States of America," and "E Pluribus Unum." At the base of the monument, bold and simple, 1 cent. A denomination so common, so overlooked, that many never give it a second thought. But numismatists, those who study and collect coins, know better. They know that in this small sliver of metal lies history, art, and sometimes, even mystery. In 2004, a few of these seemingly routine pennies slipped through with minute imperfections that would go unnoticed by almost everyone, except the most trained eyes. These weren't just mistakes. They were the result of complex processes, of machinery pushed to its limits, of split seconds where a die might shift, or a planchet might be slightly misaligned. A double die here. An off-center strike there. A weak detail in one area, a sharply struck anomaly in another. These weren't flaws. They were quirks of creation, rarities that turned a penny into a masterpiece, and then there were the ones that weren't flawed at all, but flawless. Coins that had never circulated, never felt the wear of fingertips, never clinked in a pocket. They were preserved in brilliant, uncirculated condition, their surfaces gleaming with a near-perfect sheen, their edges crisp, their detail unbroken. These coins became time capsules, tiny echoes of 2004 frozen in copper and zinc. Collectors began to take notice. They searched through rolls, scoured collections, and examined coin lots with magnifying glasses and microscopes. Some found pieces with subtle doubling in Lincoln's eye or lettering. Others found pristine examples untouched by time, hidden away in old mint sets or forgotten storage boxes. Each discovery was like striking gold, not for the metal content, but for the historical and collectible value hidden within. One of the most compelling aspects of the 2004 penny is its place in the timeline. It came just 1 year before the U.S. Mint launched the redesign of the nickel, and 5 years before the Lincoln cent itself would be overhauled in 2009 to mark his 200th birthday. The 2004 coin stood at the edge of an era, the final breath of a long-standing tradition before the storm of design changes swept in. It was the calm before the commemorative flood, a coin that bridged the past and the future in a single gleaming frame. And then there was the tale of one specific 2004 1-cent coin. Found not in a dealer's vault or a curated collection, but tucked in the bottom of a forgotten plastic tube, hidden in an old family box. It looked like the rest at first, but a closer inspection revealed its perfection. Every detail was razor sharp. The fields were mirror-like. The coin had escaped circulation entirely. It was as if time had passed around it, never touching it. Sent to grading, the results were astonishing: an MS-70, a perfect mint state. Collectors and experts were stunned. What had once been just another coin now stood in a class all its own. It wasn't just its condition that made it special. It was what it represented. A relic of a specific moment in American minting history. A piece of copper and zinc that had defied all odds to become something few ever imagined, a treasure. And so, as collectors continue to explore the world of numismatics, they are reminded again and again that value isn't always measured in weight or rarity alone. It's measured in survival, in preservation, in the magic that comes from finding something truly extraordinary in the most unexpected place, because sometimes, a coin that once paid for a handful of jelly beans becomes something far greater. Something that captures imaginations, ignites passions, and commands the gaze of the numismatic world. And today, one such coin, a perfect specimen of the 2004 1-cent penny, preserved in its full glory, untouched, uncirculated, and utterly exceptional, holds a value far beyond what anyone could have expected. A value of $90,000. The year was 2008, a year that would go down in history for more reasons than most could count. A financial storm was brewing, economies were trembling, and headlines echoed words like crisis, bailout, and recession. In the chaos of collapsing markets and vanishing fortunes, something much smaller was quietly passing from hand to hand, unnoticed, undervalued, yet destined to become an icon. A single copper-plated coin. The 2008 1-cent coin from the Denver Mint. At first glance, it was the same familiar face. Abraham Lincoln stood firm on the obverse, his gaze as determined as it had ever been. The inscription, "In God We Trust," arched above him like a halo of promise. To the left, Liberty spoke of a nation's eternal struggle and resilience. On the right, the year, 2008, anchored the coin in its place in time. Just below, a small but significant letter, D, the Denver Mint signature. Often overlooked, yet in the world of coin collectors, it could make all the difference. On the reverse, the Lincoln Memorial still reigned. It had watched over the cent since 1959, and in 2008, it stood as proud as ever. The grand columns, the stairs, and the tiny outline of Lincoln's seated statue, visible only under close inspection, were all there, set beneath the phrases "United States of America, e pluribus unum," and of course, 1 cent. It was the last full year this design would appear before a historic redesign in 2009. And that fact alone gave 2008 cents a quiet gravitas, but what made one particular 2008 penny so extraordinary wasn't just its timing. It wasn't just the mint that produced it or even the historical moment it captured. It was a combination of subtle detail, flawless preservation, and the sheer rarity of perfection in the everyday. Most coins, even fresh off the press, bear the marks of machinery. Slight nicks, light contact from other coins, or minor imperfections that result from high-speed production. Billions of pennies are struck each year. So for one to emerge flawless, untouched by wear, unsmudged by fingers, and bearing no trace of its journey, is more than unusual. It's exceptional, and so it was with this 2008 cent. Somehow, against all odds, it escaped the fate of nearly every other coin minted that year. It never found its way into a cash register, never clinked inside a pocket, and never danced through a vending machine. Instead, it remained pristine, its surface shimmering with the subtle glow of uncirculated copper, its details razor-sharp. Collectors would later marvel at this coin. Every line in Lincoln's coat was crisp. Every letter, from Liberty to 1 cent, was raised with perfect clarity. The luster, the way the light played across its surface, was textbook brilliance. It was as if the coin had been plucked from the presses and suspended in time, untouched by human hands. But even more than its visual perfection, this coin carried the weight of a closing chapter. By 2008, whispers of the upcoming redesign were already circling. The U.S. Mint was preparing to launch the Lincoln Bicentennial Series in 2009, celebrating the 200th anniversary of Lincoln's birth with 4 new reverse designs. That made the 2008 cent the very last of its kind, a final bow for the Lincoln Memorial design after nearly 50 years. A silent farewell to a symbol Americans had grown up with. This gave the 2008 cent a rare poetic quality. It wasn't just a coin, it was a moment. A turning point. A reminder of where the country had been, even as it stood on the edge of change. The economy was faltering, the world was shifting, and yet here was this perfect cent, struck with clarity and grace, representing something steady, something familiar, something unshakably American. and among all the 2008 cents, one in particular became the star. Discovered not in a bank roll or coin jar, but hidden away in a sealed mint set, stored safely by someone who may not have even known its potential. When it was finally submitted for grading, it scored an astonishing MS-70, a perfect mint state grade. Few coins ever reached this level. Even fewer cents. The grading experts were stunned. A modern coin in such flawless condition? It was like finding a needle in a haystack made of needles. Collectors began to buzz. Whispers turned into bids, and before long, this tiny copper coin, worth just 1 cent to the casual observer, had transformed into a treasure of incredible value. Not because it was old. Not because it was rare in mintage. But because it was perfect. Perfect in form. Perfect in timing. Perfect in story, and in a world where change is the only constant, and where fortunes rise and fall like tides, there's something poetic about a coin that defied time, defied wear, and defied expectation. A coin that quietly held onto its identity, even as everything around it was changing. A coin that turned 1 cent into something far more valuable, because today, that single 2008 penny, impossibly preserved, historically situated, and deeply desired, commands a value that no one could have predicted when it left the Denver Mint floor. A value of $70,000.